It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker for this ceremony. It's a real delight to introduce to you a person who most of us needs no introduction. Dr. Sam Rankin has been an integral part of this institution for more than 2 decades. Beginning in September of 1986, he was the president of Chadron State College for 12 years, during a time when the college experienced growth and reached new heights and achievements in many, many ways. Since stepping down as president, he has served as a history professor on this campus, earning rave reviews from his students for his knowledge of history, his ability to make it interesting to them, and his penchant for making them think and to make comparisons between today's world and yesterday's world, so they can prepare for tomorrow's world. No doubt about it, Dr. Rankin's leadership will have a lasting impact on the college. During his presidency, the college made tremendous progress and often took the lead in introducing programs that were extremely beneficial. He was known as a forceful leader with excellent insight into the future. Initiatives begun during his tenure as president included the Rural Health Opportunities Program, the RHOP program, that brought many of the state's brightest students to the campus to study toward careers in the medical field. The Non-Resident Scholars Program that lowers the cost for outstanding students from other states to attend Chadron State. Library automation that greatly increased the college's access to information. A master's degree in business administration, a major in range management, and a minor in Spanish. These are just some of the contributions that Dr. Rankin has made to this campus. In addition, Chadron State became a leader in interactive distance learning and assisted many regional residents in obtaining a college education. Many other technological improvements occurred during, including opening of a Chadron State site on the World Wide Web, several computer upgrades, and offering courses over the internet for the first time. Also, the Eagles joined the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, and the Galaxy Series and the Distinguished Speakers Series were begun. Physical improvements included construction of the wood-fired heating plant, the Student Center, and the Lindekin Clock Tower. The conversion of Miller Building from a mothballed gymnasium into a state-of-the-art classroom facility was begun, and the college's electrical distribution system was upgraded, and the Elliott Field Stadium and press box were expanded and improved. Also, the college's enrollment increased by more than 45%. Scholarship support doubled, a student assessment program to help measure quality and instructional effectiveness was implemented and adopted as a model by the North Central Association, and assets of the Chadron State Foundation tripled. Today's commencement program tells quite a bit about Dr. Rankin's background, but before he speaks, I would like to recognize his wife, Sharon. Please, is Sharon here? Sharon, please stand. Oh, she's way back there. Sharon? Sharon has been a great helpmate and an inspiration to him as he assumed the responsibilities of a college professor and administrator. Sharon is a registered nurse who worked in the capacity for the Chadron City Schools for 10 years and often was a community health screening volunteer. She served on the Nebraska Educational Telecommunications Board of Directors, a statewide selection committee for the nation's military academics, and the Chadron Community Hospital Board when the plans were drawn and approved for Prairie Pines Lodge. The Rankins will soon be returning to their native Ohio so they can live closer to relatives. Sam will continue to teach online courses for Chadron State College over the next 3 years, and hopefully beyond. We will definitely miss Sam and Sharon in our community and on this campus. We hope they will keep in touch with us and return often for extended visits. And I would like to say personally that Sam has been a very good mentor for me in my first 2 years as a president of Chadron State College. Sam?
Thank you very much, President Park. Vice President Veith, members of the Platform Party, graduates, faculty, friends and relatives of the graduates. When considering a topic for this very brief, and I do mean brief, talk in my study late one evening this past week, my eyes wandered to a plaque on the wall of the study. My study at home is filled with memorabilia. This plaque is somewhat special to me. It's recognition from my undergraduate alma mater, St. Joseph's College in Collegeville, Indiana. In 2001, this college bestowed its Distinguished Alumni Award on yours truly. I wanted very much to return to receive this honor at homecoming of that year, but alas, could not. Homecoming was September 16th, 2001. There were no flights that week in the U.S. They resumed at DIA the morning of homecoming, but it wasn't enough time to get back. It was a bad week for the airline industry and a tragic week for the United States. But fortunately, at least for me, 3 old buddies from Chicago had planned to attend the gathering anyway, and they agreed to represent me, and I did receive the award in absentia. My roommate of college years received the award, accompanied by 2 close friends. He was in a wheelchair at the time, and tragically he passed away several months later of heart and kidney failure. And as my eyes wandered that night from the plaque to a framed picture of my lifelong friends receiving the award, I was suspect a little bit moved by the reality of mortality, as well as the importance of friends. I was and I am a better person for having known these guys. Jerry, my roommate, a principal for many years in Illinois, Tom and Mike. There's something special about college friends. They remain close. Friends made in college often remain friends for life. They stay in touch, in short. Perhaps there is something to our alma mater which makes staying in touch with the alma mater very difficult to avoid. It's almost embedded in our persona by the time we reach graduation. That night, there was more to the picture in the plaque, and as I looked at over the award, I took a moment to read the college's seal, emblazoned on parchment on the award. The award itself included the standard sort of boilerplate wording about recognizing an individual whose career, work, or life represented the values of the college. But how often do we ask ourselves, well, what are the values of the college? Well, when one looks at the seal, it occurred to me that they're right there. On the college seal was the college motto. For St. Joseph's College, and by the way, that's without abbreviation. Sort of like in the Ohio State, this is Saint spelled out. They don't do that. St. Joseph's College. There on the seal were the 3 words, Religio Moralitas Scientia. Yeah, they were in Latin. It was a Catholic liberal arts college. Operated by the Congregation of the Most Precious Blood, CPPS. That stood for Congregatio Preciosissimi Sanguinis. Literally translated, the college's motto was religion, morality, and knowledge. The words, interestingly, formed a circle on the seal around an engraving of twin towers of the college's neo-Gothic chapel. It would be difficult looking at the document to discern whether or not there was a priority among the words of the motto. They were in a circle. Where one word ended, a blending with the next word occurred instantaneously. Sort of an endless cycle, meaning that an endless cycle of meaning, if there was meaning behind the words, that must have transcended the individual translation of each word. The words seemed to stick in the back of my mind as I searched the internet. Then I went to the internet that evening and I looked around for things to say to graduates. It's amazing what's out there, actually. Quotes from speeches from very famous and a couple of infamous people even. Some of the classic which I found included, and I'll offer just a couple here. Dr. Ruth Westmeyer, who recently noted to graduates that her favorite animal was a turtle, and that we should all be more like turtles. Well, why, you might ask? I'm sure that all of our graduates would be curious. Turtles, as we know, must stick their heads out of the shell to move ahead, and we therefore should not be afraid to stick our necks out. Well, one of the freedoms of speaking at graduations like this is that one can opine without generating a lot of backup for one's position. And my opinion here is that Dr. Ruth should stay with her area of expertise. Not sure what that is, but I'm relatively certain that it doesn't involve turtles, or for that matter, necks. Frankly, my advice would be to be very cautious about sticking your necks out. There are other ways to move ahead in life. Temper your courage with knowledge, integrity, and a lot of caution as you move ahead. Now, this second quote I've heard from at more than one commencement is from a much more respected person, actually, in my opinion. It's from Robert Frost, the master American poet, and it's from his poem, The Road Not Taken, which ends with the famous lines, "Two roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that made all the difference." How many times have you heard that at commencement? Well, you had to hear it again. The one or two speakers who have proposed this line as advice, in my opinion, take a wonderful poem by an American master a little out of context. If one reads the entire poem, it becomes clear that both roads are eminently passable or viable paths to a future that has now reached a pluperfect past. In fact, Frost notes that on the morning the roads were so equal that he planned to save one for another day, direct quote. I don't like to think that Frost meant for us to diverge for the sake of being different, for the sake of diversity, but encouraged us to choose our path with great care and deliberation. For most of us, the path more traveled is just fine. It is safe, it's sure, it's full of opportunity to make a difference with the masses and the hoi polloi that have and continue to tread there through life. I would suggest another poem of Frost for your reading, seriously, for finding meaning in the routine of life. It's entitled On Looking Up by Chance at the Constellations. Look at that poem for inspiration as we quote from the poem, "Go patiently with our lives." Educators here today will enjoy what Margaret Spelling, the current Secretary of Education, had to say to a group of graduates a couple of years ago. She said, and I quote, "Don't let anyone else take the measure of your worth and capabilities." In other words, don't let anyone else assess you. Always stand proud of your youth, or always stand proud of your worth and capabilities. Always stand proud in who you are. I wonder, could we quote Dr. Spellings in our next annual assessment report on this? No, seriously, it's not a bad quote, and it's pretty good advice. In fairness, it's good advice. It's a rousing call for individuality. But however, graduates need to be ready to have your individuality challenged daily. Our work is evaluated regularly, assessed by peers, superiors, clients, students. And my advice is that there's value in listening to our critics and allowing others to take our measure and being honest with us about where we need to improve. And our last quote, once again, I come back to Dr. Ruth. She said, "We are all children in various stages of growing up." Well, now Dr. Ruth is a psychologist, and no offense to the psychology faculty here. Well, this old college professor and ex-president does not for a moment think that you or we are all children anymore. We are adults. We're in a civilized and complex society in a diverse and often troubled world. Well, that's history. I don't recall a time that civilization hasn't been complex for those living in it. And I can't recall a time when a world has not been diverse and a bit troubled. No uplifting, clever quote or analogy or expert speaking out of this field of expertise can change that. They can inspire for a moment and uplift for a day, but please, the clever quotes are hardly appropriate as guideposts for life, not in any world that I studied or know. My undergraduate alma mater, therefore, kept coming back to me. The more I looked for quotes, the more just the 3 words of the alma mater came back. Its motto. The long-forgotten but now remembered motto. After all, 47 years ago, the corporate faculty of scholars, teachers, and administrators, religious and secular at this college, they knew the depth of meaning in those words, and they dedicated their lives to an effort to ensure that the full meaning of religion, morality, and knowledge would serve its graduates long after graduation. The words were a constant in the complexity and even chaos that goes with the joy of being in an academic community. So I'm going to look at each of those words for just a second. Religion, religio in Latin. It was a Catholic college. I'm not going to proselytize, believe me. I remember studying moral theology, therefore, under a priest who was a graduate of the Pontifical Institute and wrote the textbook. I remember studying under a New Testament scholar who translated the New Testament and used to fill the blackboard with Koine Greek. Since I was taking a course in Greek, I can still recall Father Alois Dirksen saying, the power of language is the ability to control thought. And you can't learn a language, Rankin, unless you use it. As I went through nightly filling up blue books with Greek. Packing the other week, I saved some of those just to show to the grandkids someday. But religion was more than coursework. It was an understanding that life had a deeper meaning than the classroom. We learned, if memory serves me, in this liberal arts college by observing the joy, the thirst for knowledge, and the happiness of teachers whose knowledge was tempered with wit and humor, whose goal was to educate, not humiliate. There were a few mean-spirited faculty, but too inconsequential to remember today. Rather, what I remember about those teachers, and that I will always remember about those teachers, the faculty here and faculties that I've worked with in the past, was that they were unhappy only if they had not made contact with students to a high level of standard on that particular day. They were solicitous of student needs and concerns. They enjoyed relating to youth, and their enthusiasm was infectious both inside and outside of the classroom. They were religious in the sense that they had faith in human potential. They were doctrinal. They were not quick to condemn. They were faithful in a religious sense to a set of ideals that were and remain at the heart of humanism and Western civilization. They were very much in the world, but they were not of it. Finally, in academia, then in the early 60s, as now, they were the most inclusive people on the planet in their worldview. They did not define the unknown for us in ways that created an exclusive nature of something to be feared, but the unknown was rather an opportunity for learning, understanding, embracing. In short, their religiosity was secular as well as doctrinal. It inspired one to live to do well, not just for the moment, but for the lifetime. I was fortunate because while I was at St. Joe's, I was also in the seminary for a brief period of time. Roughly as long as it took for me to figure out that they were serious about these vows that I was going to take. I think I met Sharon about then too, but I'm not. But as I knew these individuals in an informal setting, I understood the world they came from. On weekends, these priests, teachers, scholars heard confessions and said Mass at parishes from South Chicago to Michigan City, including Hammond, East Chicago, and Gary. They knew life well. They knew all of its sides. In their intellectual life, they focused on the value of meditation to refresh one's soul and mind for the toils of service, teaching, and research as well as they could. And that is a lesson for all of us in that old college motto. Take time each day, graduates, to seek thoughts, read for inspiration, exercise the mental ability to be happy, to have faith, to possess hope for the morrow, regardless of the unreasonableness of the world. Avoid the atrophy that can come from constant multitasking in today's complex world. Morality. Well, now that ought to be an easy one. Moralitas, second word. Unbundling the second word of my alma mater's motto seems pretty straightforward in its advice for graduates, its potential. Be moral, folks. It certainly meant that and means accepting responsibility for our daily lives. It means intellectual honesty, obviously, but it also means intellectual discipline. Personal integrity, rigorous standards for others and ourselves are basic, and they seemed too obvious to mention. But I do mention them because I think on a graduation day, it's important to understand that those words have meaning and they will go with us whether we like it or not, because the meaning is tied very much to our civilization and society. It's worth mentioning also because the good in moral behavior, while not always achievable, was and is a virtuous pursuit and a journey best guided by informed judgments and empirical reality. For being faithful and moral did and does not excuse one from being smart, knowledgeable and capable of inductive and deductive reasoning, and you've all been trained well. I saw the Intro to Graduate Studies course. I've had a number of you write research papers for me. And I don't think at the time you thought that was related to my old college motto, but it is. None of my college teachers suffered mushy thinking, intellectual laziness, or lack of respect for truth gladly. And graduates, don't you do that either. Nor should professionals in any rank today. I think today, as then, faculty and administrators understood that youth would occasionally stray from the straight and narrow. Actually, I know, as an empirical reality, that Thirsty Thursdays were not invented in Chadron, Nebraska. As a matter of fact, they weren't invented in Nebraska. The first one in the history of Western civilization was at the Southside College Inn in Rensselaer, Indiana, on one September evening in 1963, when I turned 21. I know, I was there. But that didn't excuse me from getting to class the next day. Therein, there might be a generational difference. But anyway, as I think about it, the old college motto probably was and is the reason that good faculty and students fail occasionally, but understand that the continuous pursuit, getting up and pursuing the virtue of knowledge and railing against the presence of stupidity is frankly our role in life. And under morality, it would be stupid to reject that which gives us a sense of continuing self-worth. So for us in this secular setting, morality does indeed have meaning that runs deep in our civilization and should run deeply in our institutions of higher education. Well, so much for morality. Religion, morality, and finally, scientia. Now that does not translate as science, but as knowledge in this case. Nothing against scientists. I suppose it could, but in this particular instance, it translates in a more generic sense as knowledge. Certainly a love for knowledge and the development of effective learning habits are good thoughts for graduate. College is all about knowledge. Its evolution in the past, its present condition, knowledge's potential for the future. Then as now, knowledge is as much a matter of appreciation for the elegance, now that's scientific, for the elegance of reasoned thought. It's as much a part of appreciating that as it is accumulating facts, numbers, skills. We have computers to do that. The rhetoric of expression formed in my student days is a reality to treat with a great deal of respect. As I recall, my professors, they didn't tolerate sloppy logic. Don't you as well? They didn't tolerate bad rhetoric. Don't do that. Or the misuse of the art and science of the written and spoken word. Knowledge means dedication to opposition, an eternal opposition to the misuse of the spoken word or written word. So the old college motto focused on elements, it dawned on me that evening, of the life of the mind and soul that were important then. I hadn't thought about this motto in years. And they are important today because the focus is on the elements of the life of the mind and soul that are essential to our lives long after we're gone from college. Religio, moralitas, scientia. I think the Padres had it right. They are essential to a fulfilled life. They're essential to a happy life, to a purposeful life, in their deep and broad and continuing meaning. As I enter a new phase of life, my hope is that my alma mater's motto will continue to serve as a gyroscope for whatever the future brings me. I certainly will be praying when I take up bass fishing again in at least the 25 lakes I've counted within a 40-minute drive of where we will be living in Ohio. I haven't mentioned it to Sharon yet, but I think a pickup and a bass boat would be nice too. Something to pray for, perhaps. Phased retirement means that I will be around but online. And so for Sharon and myself, please accept our thank you for almost 21 years of good company. As we move into the sunrise, there's no actual sunset here. It doesn't work because we're going east. I want to wish you this Irish prayer, which I know you've heard before, but it's my favorite. May the sun shine gently on your face. May the rain fall softly on your fields. May the wind be at your back. May the road rise to meet you, and may the Lord hold you in the hollow of his hand. Until we meet again, goodbye, Chadron. Thank you.